Yo, Bebop! Wait for me!
We've got to find an energy source immediately!
There'll be more! We've got to shut down the computer that's controlling them!
I'm sure you don't remember the last episode of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Not the title, not the plot, not even the villain. Because for most people, there wasn't a last episode. One Saturday morning, the Turtles were just gone. No big finale, no two-part event, no emotional goodbye between Splinter and his students. The show that had run for nearly a decade simply vanished from the schedule, as if someone had unplugged it mid-sentence. And for years, that's the ending people remembered. But here's the strange part. The show didn't end once. It actually ended more than once. And depending on where you lived, what channel you watched, you may have only seen the version where nothing was finished. Some kids saw an ending where the story simply stopped. Others saw an ending where everything changed. Tone, stakes, even the characters themselves. And in that version, the Turtles didn't just fight another villain. They finally grew up. So the real question isn't how the Turtles ended. It's which ending you actually saw.
Hey, Rocksteady, where'd you... Oh, there you are!
Part 1. The premise refresher. The Forever War. On the surface, the premise was simple. 4 teenage turtles, mutated by strange chemicals. A rat sensei who trained them in the art of ninjutsu. A sewer lair. A van. And an unlimited supply of pizza. Every week, they protected New York City from Shredder, Krang, and whatever new scheme threatened the planet before lunchtime. It was loud, colorful, repetitive in the most comforting way possible. Shredder would hatch a plan. Krang would complain about it. Bebop and Rocksteady would mess it up. The Turtles would crack jokes, win the fight, and celebrate with another slice. Then the next week, everything reset. Nobody aged. Nobody changed. Nobody learned a final lesson that stuck. Splinter stayed the patient master. The Turtles stayed the students. The war never really meant anything because it never actually ended. That was the secret engine of the show. As long as nothing truly changed, the story could run forever. More villains, more battles, more toys, more seasons, more Saturdays. But eventually, something did change. The villains disappeared. The tone darkened. The jokes thinned out. And the show started asking a question it had avoided for nearly a decade. What happens when the students finally grow up? Because when that moment came, the ending stopped being a joke.
Yo, Bebop! Wait for me!
Part 2. The ending breakdown. The TV ending, what most Americans remember. For most American viewers, the Turtles didn't get a finale. They just disappeared. Sometime around 1993 or 1994, the show stopped airing on CBS. One week it was there, the next week it wasn't. No farewell special, no emotional send-off, no final battle that tied everything together. Just silence. The last episode most people saw was Night of the Dark Turtle. In it, Shredder and Krang's Technodrome was finally banished to Dimension X, locked away where it could never return. It looked important, it felt big, but it wasn't written as a finale. There was no speech, no closure, no sense that the story was over. The network simply moved on. And for millions of kids, that was the ending. The Turtles vanished mid-adventure, like a comic strip that just stopped printing. But here's the part most people never realized. The show didn't end there. It kept going. 3 more seasons were produced. New villains, new stakes, a completely different tone. But they didn't air consistently across the country. Some markets showed them, others never did. If your local station didn't pick them up, you never knew those episodes existed. To you, the Turtles were gone forever. And the strangest part? Those final seasons were the only ones where the story actually moved forward.
We've got to find an energy source immediately!
The true ending, when the war turned real. Season 8 didn't ease into change. It crashed into it. The bright colors were gone. The neon skies, the toy commercial palette, the soft Saturday morning lighting, all of it disappeared almost overnight. In its place, shadows, harder lines, and a sky that was permanently red. Fans later called them the Red Sky seasons, but at the time, it felt like the show had quietly replaced itself with something else. The jokes were fewer. The danger felt real. And for the first time in 9 years, the Turtles were fighting enemies who didn't behave like cartoon villains. Because Shredder and Krang were gone. No more familiar routines. No more comfortable failures. No more villains who would lose every week and return the next. In their place came Lord Dreg. He wasn't a mad scientist. He wasn't a bumbling warlord. He didn't shout catchphrases or build ridiculous contraptions that exploded on cue. He waged war. Dreg didn't want revenge. He didn't want attention. He wanted Earth itself, its resources, its population, its strategic value. His plans weren't jokes. They were military campaigns. For the first time, it felt like the Turtles could actually lose. And then the show did something even stranger. It introduced a new ally named Carter. Young, brave, eager to help the Turtles in their final battles. And then it gave him an incurable mutation disease. Not a temporary problem, not a one-episode crisis solved by a glowing vial of anti-mutagen. A condition that kept getting worse. A problem no one could fix. Saturday morning cartoons didn't do that. They especially didn't let the problem stay unsolved. Carter eventually left with a group of time travelers searching for a cure somewhere in the future. No guarantee, no miracle solution. He just disappeared into the time stream. His story never resolved. For a show built on infinite resets, that was a radical idea. Sometimes people leave, and you don't know what happens to them. And then came the final battle. In the last episode, Divide and Conquer, Michelangelo and Donatello returned to Dimension X, scavenging the remains of the Technodrome, the same fortress that had defined the early years of the show. Old enemies, old technology, old ghosts. They used that abandoned power to confront Lord Dreg in one final assault. No jokes, no resets, no promise that everything would go back to normal next week. This time, the victory stuck. Dreg was banished permanently to Dimension X, joining the other villains in exile. For the first time since the show began, there were no major threats left. No Shredder, no Krang, no new warlord waiting in the wings, just the Turtles and Splinter. And then came the moment that actually ended the series. After 9 years, after nearly 200 episodes, after an endless cycle of battles that never truly mattered, Splinter finally looked at his students and said the words he'd been holding back since the beginning. You are my equals. Not teenagers. Not pupils. Not apprentices in an endless training loop. Equals. Masters. The war was over. The lessons were complete. The journey had an endpoint after all. For a show built on eternal adolescence, that was the real ending. Not a final explosion. Not a last villain. But the moment the students finally grew up.
There'll be more! We've got to shut down the computer that's controlling them!
The deleted scenes. The version that wasn't allowed. While American fans argued about which ending was real, something even stranger was happening overseas. In the United Kingdom, the show didn't just change. It was rewritten. British broadcast regulators decided the word ninja was too violent for children's television. The weapons, the martial arts, the implied combat, all of it raised red flags. So they didn't soften it. They erased it. Every reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Dialogue was edited. Lines were cut. Words were removed mid-sentence. The result was surreal. Characters would talk about the Hero Turtles in situations where the name made no sense. Sentences would collapse in on themselves because a key word had simply vanished. It was the same show, but with holes punched through the language. And then the censorship went further. Michelangelo's signature weapon, the nunchaku, was completely banned. Any scene showing them had to be edited, trimmed, or removed entirely. Sometimes fights would cut away halfway through. Enemies would suddenly be defeated off-screen. Michelangelo would run into battle, and then the scene would jump ahead, as if he'd never fought at all. To British kids, the party dude turtle seemed strangely useless in combat. He joked. He posed. But when the action started, the camera looked somewhere else. The edits became so extreme that the producers made a decision no one watching would ever understand. They removed the nunchaku completely. From season 4 onward, Michelangelo no longer used his signature weapon in any version of the show. Not just in the UK, everywhere. His new weapon was a grappling line, a neutral tool. Safe, acceptable, easy to broadcast. But something subtle was lost. In the original Mirage comics, the nunchaku weren't just a weapon. They were part of Michelangelo's personality. Flashy, playful, unpredictable. They matched his energy. When they disappeared, a piece of him disappeared too. UK children never knew what was missing. American children never knew why it changed. The censorship was quiet, invisible, permanent. And in a strange way, it created yet another version of the show. One where the turtles weren't even allowed to be what they were called.
Time for some random reprogramming. I hope this works.
And I hope real soon.
Final beat. The ending most kids never saw. So in the end, there wasn't just one ending to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There were at least two. The first ending was the one most kids remember. The turtles simply vanished from Saturday morning television. No goodbye, no closure, just a show that stopped showing up one day and never came back. For millions of viewers, the story ended in the middle of the journey. But the second ending did exist. In those final Red Sky seasons, the tone darkened. Friends were lost. Enemies didn't joke. Consequences finally mattered. And after nearly a decade of endless battles, Splinter looked at his students and said the words that changed everything. "You are my equals." Not students, not children, equals. The mission was over. The training had worked. The loop had finally broken. The Turtles didn't win because they defeated one last villain. They won because they grew up. Most fans never saw that moment. They moved on, assuming the story had simply faded away like so many other cartoons. But somewhere in 1996, a kid watched that final episode and saw something rare. A Saturday morning show that actually finished what it started. The war ended. The students became masters. And for the first time since 1987, the Turtles didn't need to fight anymore. Somewhere in Dimension X, Shredder, Krang, and Lord Dreg still plot their impossible returns. They'll never succeed. Because this time, the story really is over, and the Turtles can finally rest.